The backyard of my parents' suburban home was decorated with blue and gold streamers, Dad's favorite colors from his college days. 43 years at Patterson Manufacturing had earned him a gold watch, a decent pension, and tonight's retirement celebration with family and co-workers. The smell of barbecued chicken filled the warm June evening as 3 generations of the Torres family gathered around picnic tables laden with Mom's famous potato salad and Uncle Miguel's homemade tamales. I stood near the back fence, wearing jeans and a simple polo shirt, watching Dad work the crowd like the natural salesman he'd always been. At 65, Roberto Torres still had the energy and charisma that had made him Patterson's top regional sales manager for nearly 2 decades. Tonight was his night and I was genuinely happy for him. "Danny, get over here." Uncle Miguel's booming voice cut across the yard. "We're telling war stories." I walked over to where the men had gathered around the beer cooler. Uncle Miguel, Dad's older brother, was holding court as usual. At 58, Miguel owned 3 auto repair shops and never let anyone forget it. His son Carlos ran a small construction company, and his other son Luis had just opened his second restaurant location. "We were just talking about what it takes to be successful," Miguel said, putting a heavy arm around my shoulders. "Building something real, you know? Creating jobs, serving the community." The other men nodded, mostly Dad's co-workers and a few family friends. They looked at me with the mixture of pity and condescension I'd grown used to over the years. "Take Carlos here," Miguel continued, gesturing toward his eldest son. 28 years old, already employs 15 people. Built his business from nothing. He squeezed my shoulder. "That's what real success looks like." Carlos beamed with pride. "It's all about taking risks, working with your hands, building something tangible." "Exactly." Miguel's voice grew louder, drawing attention from the nearby tables. "Real men own businesses, create jobs, take responsibility." He looked directly at me. "They don't flip burgers for minimum wage." The group murmured agreement. I took a sip of my beer and said nothing. "Now don't get me wrong," Miguel continued, warming to his theme. "There's nothing shameful about honest work. But Danny here." He shook his head sadly. 31 years old, still working fast food. Living in that tiny apartment, driving his mom's old car. "It's honest work," I said quietly. "Honest, sure. But where's the ambition? Where's the drive to build something bigger?" Miguel spread his arms wide. "Your father worked 43 years to build a career, provide for his family. Your cousins are creating businesses, employing people. But you—" "Miguel," Dad interjected gently, "Danny's doing his best." "His best." Miguel laughed, but not unkindly. "Roberto, your son is brilliant. Remember how good he was with computers in high school? But instead of using that brain to build something real, he's asking people if they want fries with their order." The conversation was drawing more attention now. Mom looked over from the dessert table with concern. Some of Dad's former colleagues were listening with obvious interest in the family drama. "The thing is," Carlos added, "business ownership teaches you about responsibility, leadership, real-world problem-solving. You can't learn that working for someone else." "Absolutely," agreed Luis. "When you own something, you think differently. You see opportunities everywhere." I nodded thoughtfully. "You're right about that. See? Danny gets it." Miguel clapped me on the back. "It's never too late to start thinking like an entrepreneur. Maybe Carlos could give you some advice about the construction business, or Luis could show you the restaurant industry." "That's generous of you both." My phone began ringing. The caller ID showed Goldman Sachs Private Wealth, David Chen. "Excuse me," I said, reaching for the phone. "This might be important." "Important?" Miguel chuckled. "What could be important about a burger-flipping job?" I answered the call and, after a moment's consideration, tapped the speaker button. "Mr. Torres," David Chen's voice was crisp and professional. "I have excellent news. The Goldman Sachs Investment Committee has approved the full $8 billion acquisition proposal." The backyard fell completely silent. "The full amount?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Sir. Wellington Global Enterprises has agreed to purchase Quantum Food Systems for exactly $8.2 billion. The deal should close within 60 days. I could feel 43 pairs of eyes staring at me. "That's wonderful news, David. Please proceed with the paperwork and schedule the board meeting for next Tuesday." "Absolutely, sir." Congratulations on building one of the largest food service empires in North America. The Goldman team is very impressed with Quantum's growth trajectory. Thank you. I'll speak with you tomorrow about the transition timeline. I ended the call and looked around at my family's shocked faces. Uncle Miguel's mouth was opening and closing like a fish. Danny, Dad said slowly, who was that? My investment banker at Goldman Sachs. Investment banker? Carlos's voice cracked. For the sale of my company. Quantum Food Systems. I took another sip of beer. We own 1,247 restaurant locations across 8 states. 1,200. Luis whispered. 47, I corrected. We just opened 2 new locations in Phoenix last week. Miguel found his voice. Danny, are you saying you own restaurants? I'm saying I built the 3rd largest quick-service restaurant chain in the country over the past 6 years. I pulled out my phone and showed them our corporate website. Annual revenue last year was $3.1 billion. The phone display showed the Quantum Food Systems logo above photos of modern restaurant interiors and smiling employees. But you work at... Carlos started then stopped. I work at the flagship location downtown. As the founder and CEO, I like to stay connected to daily operations. I scrolled through the website to our leadership page, showing my photo next to the title, Chief Executive Officer, Daniel Torres. The burger flipping you mentioned? I was testing new menu items and training protocols. Dad's retired colleague Janet stepped forward. Wait a minute. Quantum Food Systems, aren't they the ones who revolutionized fast casual dining? I read about them in Business Weekly. That's us. We were featured on the cover 3 months ago. Janet pulled out her phone and quickly searched, then showed the screen to the group. Here it is. The $3 billion fast food revolution. How Daniel Torres built an empire one location at a time. $3 billion, Miguel repeated numbly. That was our valuation before the acquisition offer. Wellington Global is paying $8.2 billion because they see the growth potential in our technology platform and market expansion strategy. My cousin Luis was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Danny, if you're worth billions, why do you drive Mom's old Honda? Because it gets me where I need to go and I prefer to invest capital in business growth rather than personal displays. I gestured toward the street. Though I did upgrade recently. The Tesla Model Y in the driveway is mine. That's yours. Mom called from across the yard. Model Y Performance. Fully autonomous driving package. I figured it was time for better safety features. Uncle Miguel was still processing. But Danny, if you've been this successful, why didn't you tell us? Why let us think? Think what, Uncle Miguel? That I was a failure because I worked in food service. We didn't think you were a failure. You literally just told 40 people that I flip burgers for minimum wage and lack ambition. Miguel's face flushed red. I was trying to motivate you. By humiliating me at Dad's retirement party? Carlos stepped forward. Danny, we had no idea you were building something this big. Because you never asked what I was building. You only saw what I wasn't working in an office, wasn't wearing suits, wasn't driving expensive cars. So you assumed I wasn't successful. Dad walked over from the dessert table still holding his retirement cake. Son, I'm confused. If you own all these restaurants, why do you still work at the downtown location? Because that's where I learned everything about the business. Customer service, inventory management, staff scheduling, food preparation, quality control. I looked around at my family's bewildered faces. You can't manage what you don't understand and you can't understand what you've never done yourself. So the burger flipping, Luis said slowly, is how I ensure every Quantum location maintains the same standards that made us successful. I work shifts at different locations every month. Last week I was in Denver training new managers. Next month I'll be in our Seattle flagship. Dad set down his cake and stared at me. Danny, are you telling me that when you said you had to work weekends? I was flying to different cities to oversee restaurant openings and review quarterly performance with regional managers. And when you couldn't afford to join us for that vacation last year? I was closing a $340 million acquisition of a West Coast chain that doubled our market presence. Mom walked over, tears in her eyes. Danny, why didn't you tell us? Because every time I tried to share good news, someone in this family found a way to make it about money or ask for financial help. I looked at Uncle Miguel. Remember when I mentioned getting promoted 3 years ago? Before I could explain what the promotion meant, you were asking about loans for Carlos's construction business. Carlos looked down at his feet. And when I bought the apartment downtown, everyone assumed I was overextending myself financially instead of celebrating that I could afford to live independently. We were worried about you. Mom protested. You were worried about your assumptions. There's a difference. My phone rang again. This time it was Jennifer Walsh, my chief operating officer. Daniel, sorry to interrupt your family celebration, but Wellington Global just sent the final contract terms. They want to announce the acquisition tomorrow morning. Tomorrow's Sunday. They're planning a major press release. Wellington Global acquires Revolutionary Food Service Company for record $8.2 billion. The story will be in every business publication by Monday. I looked around at my family's faces, all focused on my phone conversation. That timeline works. Schedule the press conference for 9 a.m. Monday. I'll be there. Excellent. Also, the Wall Street Journal wants to do a feature story about your journey from burger flipper to billionaire. Their words, not mine. Uncle Miguel's eyes widened at the word billionaire. Set it up for next week. And Jennifer? Please send the Wellington integration team our employee retention protocols. I want to make sure all current Quantum staff receive promotion opportunities during the transition. Already prepared. Daniel, if I may say so, this acquisition validates everything we've built over the past 6 years. It validates the team's hard work. My role was just connecting the right people with the right opportunities. After ending the call, I looked around at my family who were staring at me like I was a stranger. Billionaire. Miguel whispered. I pulled up my portfolio summary on my phone and showed it to him. After taxes and the acquisition costs, my personal net worth will be approximately $4.7 billion. Dad's legs buckled slightly and Carlos caught his arm. Dad, are you okay? I asked, stepping forward. I need to sit down. Dad lowered himself onto a picnic bench. Danny, I've been worried about you for years. Worried you weren't making enough money, weren't building a career, weren't thinking about your future. I was thinking about my future, Dad. I was building it. But why didn't you tell us? I sat down next to him on the bench. Because I needed to know I could succeed without family pressure or expectations. And honestly, I wanted to prove to myself that I could build something significant starting from the ground up. Starting from the ground up, Luis repeated. You mean? I worked every position in the food service industry before opening my first location. Prep cook, cashier, shift manager, assistant manager, general manager. I learned the business from every angle. So when we thought you were stuck in minimum wage jobs, I was earning my MBA from the School of Actual Experience. Dad looked at his retirement watch. The gold timepiece Patterson Manufacturing had given him for 4 decades of service. Danny, in 43 years at Patterson, I never built anything close to what you've accomplished. Dad, you built something more important than money. What's that? You built a family that cares about each other even when we don't understand each other. I gestured around the backyard full of relatives and friends. This party, this celebration, this is what real success looks like. Uncle Miguel sat down across from us, his earlier swagger completely gone. Danny, I owe you an apology. A big one. Uncle Miguel, you were protecting Dad's moment. I get it. No, I was showing off and putting you down to make myself feel bigger. He shook his head. Carlos and Luis, they work hard, but what you built. He gestured helplessly. $8 billion. I can't even wrap my head around that. The money isn't the point, I said. The point is that we all found ways to serve our communities and take care of our families. Carlos builds homes, Luis feeds people, you keep cars running. I just happen to scale my approach a little differently. Carlos laughed nervously. A little differently. Danny, you're about to become one of the richest people in the state. Which means I have more resources to help the people and causes I care about. I pulled up another app on my phone. Carlos, that construction project you've been trying to land, the new community center downtown? Yeah, but the city council said the budget was too tight. I showed him my phone screen. Torres Foundation just approved a $12 million grant for community development projects. The community center is fully funded as of this morning. Carlos stared at the grant approval letter displayed on my screen. You You funded the community center? The foundation funded it. I just happened to chair the board. Danny, Luis said slowly, my second restaurant has been struggling with startup costs. Already handled. Quantum Food Systems just signed a supplier agreement with Casa Luis for our authentic Mexican food line. 3-year contract worth $2.3 million annually. Luis's face went white. $2.3 million. Your recipes scaled across our Southwest locations. You'll need to hire additional staff, but the Torres Foundation can provide small business development loans at 0 interest. Dad was looking at me like he'd never seen me before. Son, how long have you been planning all this? 3 years. Since I realized that individual success doesn't mean much if your family is still struggling. But we weren't struggling. Carlos has been working 18-hour days trying to keep his business afloat. Luis remortgaged his house to open the second restaurant. Uncle Miguel's been putting off his own retirement because his savings aren't sufficient. I looked around at their faces. I've been watching and waiting for the right time to help. The right time? Miguel asked. When I could help without it looking like charity or creating dependency. Business partnerships, supplier contracts, grants through legitimate foundations, ways for everyone to earn success rather than just receive it. Mom appeared beside our table, carrying a fresh pitcher of lemonade. What's all this serious talk about? This is supposed to be a party. Mom, I said, sit down for a minute. She settled onto the bench next to Dad, immediately sensing the tension. I have something to tell you. About my work situation. Oh, honey, you don't need to explain anything to these men. We're proud of you no matter what. Maria, Miguel said quietly, Danny isn't exactly who we thought he was. What do you mean? I handed Mom my phone showing the Goldman Sachs acquisition summary. I'm selling my company for $8.2 billion. Mom stared at the screen for 30 seconds, then looked at me, then back at the screen. Danny, what is this? It's the sale agreement for Quantum Food Systems. The restaurant chain I've been building for the past 6 years. Restaurant chain. Mom's voice was barely audible. Dad leaned over to look at the phone. 1,247 locations, he read aloud. Annual revenue $3.1 billion. He looked up at me. Danny, is this real? It's real, Dad. The backyard had gone quiet as other family members noticed the intense conversation happening at our table. But you work at the Burger Palace downtown, Mom said, confusion evident in her voice. I own the Burger Palace downtown. And 1,246 other locations just like it. Uncle Miguel's beer can slipped from his hand, clattering onto the picnic table. You own Burger Palace? Carlos asked. The whole chain. Well, it's actually called Quantum Food Systems on the corporate level. Burger Palace is just our most recognizable brand. We also own Quick Grill Express, Valley Fresh Sandwiches, and Metro Morning Coffee. Luis's eyes widened. Metro Morning Coffee? I buy coffee there every day. And we appreciate your business. You're actually one of our highest frequency customers in the Southwest region. Dad was still staring at my phone. Danny, this says you're the Chief Executive Officer. That's right. But when we asked about your job, I told you I worked in food service. Which is true. You let us think you were working minimum wage. Because every time I mentioned business success, this family found ways to turn it into requests for money or assumptions about who I should become. I looked around the table. I needed to build something independently before dealing with family expectations. My phone rang again. This time it was Marcus Thompson, our Chief Financial Officer. Daniel, Wellington just confirmed the transition timeline. They want to retain all current management and expand the franchise model internationally. I kept the call on speaker. How many new locations are they projecting? Conservative estimate, 800 additional franchises over 3 years. Aggressive projection, 1,500 locations across North America and Europe. Revenue projections? $12 to $15 billion annually by 2028. Uncle Miguel made a choking sound. Excellent. Set up the management transition meetings for next week. And Marcus? Please prepare franchise opportunity packages for 3 potential partners I want to discuss. Of course, sir. Should I include the standard owner-operator training programs? Yes, but customize them for experienced business operators who already understand customer service and operations management. After ending the call, I looked at Carlos and Luis, who were staring at me with mixtures of shock and dawning understanding. "Carlos," I said, "your construction company would be perfect for our facilities development division. We need someone who understands building codes, project management and quality construction." "You want me to build restaurants?" "I want you to oversee construction for 200+ new locations over the next 18 months. The contract would be worth approximately $47 million. Carlos's chair tipped backward as he jerked in surprise, and he had to grab the table to keep from falling. "Luis, your restaurant management experience makes you an ideal candidate for our regional franchise development program. We're looking for operators who understand authentic flavors and community engagement." "What would that involve?" "Managing 15 to 20 franchise locations in the Southwest region. Base salary $280,000 annually, plus percentage of regional profits." Luis's wife Rosa, who had been listening from the next table, stood up and walked over. "Luis, did he just offer you a job making $280,000 a year?" "It's not a job offer," I clarified. "It's a partnership opportunity. Luis would own equity stakes in the locations he manages." Dad finally found his voice. "Danny, I don't understand any of this. If you've been this successful, why live like someone who understands that wealth is a responsibility, not a trophy?" I gestured around the backyard. "Dad, look at this party. Look at how happy everyone is, how much love is in this family. Would that have been the same if you'd known I was worth billions? We would have been proud of you. Would you? Or would you have been proud of my money?" The question hung in the air like smoke from the barbecue grill. When Uncle Miguel talks about Carlos's construction business, he talks about the work, the employees, the community impact. That's real pride. I looked at Miguel. "But when you talked about my work tonight, you focused only on the paycheck size. That's the difference." Miguel's face was flushed with embarrassment. "Denny, I had no idea." "That's exactly right. You had no idea what I was building because you never asked. You just assumed that working in food service meant failure. But we see you at that downtown location all the time." Mom protested. "Taking orders, cleaning tables. Learning my business from the ground up. Every successful restaurant chain owner I studied had done the same thing, worked every position to understand what their employees experience and what customers actually want." Dad leaned forward, his retirement watch catching the light from the backyard strings. "Son, are you saying you've been conducting business research by working in your own restaurants?" "I'm saying I've been running a $3 billion company while making sure I never lose touch with the fundamentals that made us successful." Jennifer Walsh called back, interrupting the family processing time. "Daniel, one quick update. Wellington wants to discuss expansion into international markets during Monday's meeting. Should I prepare the European feasibility studies?" "Please. And Jennifer, prepare partnership presentations for 3 new regional operators I'll be recommending." "Excellent. Oh, and the Wall Street Journal confirmed their Monday interview about your journey from restaurant worker to billionaire CEO." I could see Dad's colleagues exchanging glances, clearly recognizing that they'd just witnessed something extraordinary. "Schedule it for Tuesday afternoon. Monday will be busy with the acquisition finalization." After ending the call, I looked around at my family, who were all staring at me with expressions ranging from awe to embarrassment. "Uncle Miguel," I said gently, "you asked about ambition and drive. Building quantum food systems required working 16-hour days for 6 years, studying business strategy during breaks, and reinvesting every profit into growth rather than buying things to impress people." Miguel nodded slowly. "Danny, I owe you more than an apology." "You don't owe me anything. But maybe next time, ask someone about their goals before assuming they don't have any." "What happens now?" Carlos asked. I stood up and straightened my polo shirt. Now Dad gets to enjoy his retirement knowing his family is financially secure. Carlos gets to build the largest restaurant construction project in the region's history. Luis becomes a franchise partner in one of the fastest-growing food service companies in America. "And you?" Dad asked. "I get to spend more time at family parties instead of working 18-hour days." I smiled. Though I'll probably still test new menu items occasionally. As the evening wound down and guests began saying their goodbyes, Dad pulled me aside near the back fence. Danny, I need to ask you something and I want you to be honest. Sure, Dad. Are you angry with us? For not seeing what you were accomplishing? I considered the question carefully. I'm not angry, Dad. But I am disappointed that my own family measured my worth by your assumptions rather than my actual achievements. Dad nodded sadly. We failed you. No, you taught me something more valuable than business success. What's that? You taught me that real success means taking care of the people you love, even when they don't understand or appreciate what you're doing. I gestured toward the yard where Mom was packing leftovers for everyone to take home. This party, this celebration of your retirement, this is what matters. But the money, the business empire, are tools to make more moments like this possible. Dad, your retirement party just became a celebration of our family's next chapter. As I drove home that night in the Tesla, my phone buzzed with texts from family members who were still processing the evening's revelations. But the message that mattered most was from Dad. Proud of you, son. Always have been, even when I didn't show it right. Monday morning, the Wall Street Journal headline read, From Fry Cook to Fortune. How Daniel Torres built an $8.2 billion food empire while his family thought he flipped burgers. By Tuesday, Uncle Miguel had started telling anyone who'd listen about his nephew, the billionaire CEO who still worked weekend shifts to stay connected to his employees. And every Sunday after that, family dinners had a different energy, less judgment, more curiosity about what everyone was actually building in their lives. Success, I realized, wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about creating opportunities for everyone to be right about their potential.